her bizarre behavior was born out of Manson's evil persuasiveness and fed by her constant drug use. During her Manson years, Suesan Atkins dropped acid at least 300 times, and she smoked, swallowed, shot up, and snorted every other drug in sight. And although she had no drugs in her first 5 years of imprisonment, she says it took her that long to fully regain her consciousness, to even begin to realize what she had done. All of the LSD, all of the other drugs had put her in a fog, which she didn't begin to come out of until 2 years ago.
You'd have to understand what acid does to the mind in order to understand how a person can get confused behind drugs. And I would take a thesis writing a book on what LSD can do to the mind. But
it was powerful enough to keep you in a fog for all those years, even after you stopped using.
I used to think that you came down off an acid trip after 12 hours. That's not true. Every time you take LSD, you rises or expands, and the moral fiber of your character, which is put in you, or when you grow up, everybody grows up with different morals according to their culture. Okay, when you take acid, your mind expands beyond these moral characteristics and your concepts of right and wrong. So you step out beyond those bounds, and when you step out beyond those bounds, the imagination begins to take over. And the imagination is a very deceitful thing. It's a fantasy. And when you take acid, you go out beyond that, you think you're coming back to where you started from. Originally, you don't. And every time you drop acid, you get a little bit further away from reality. And I took so much acid that I just was what I would term spaced. And it took me many years to what I term now re-enter. And that was just through not having any acid and having to deal with reality every day.
At 21, Suesan Atkins would become the most visible member of a ragtag bunch of killers, the Manson family. A one-time nice little kid as she grew up in Northern California, Suesan became a popular babysitter, captained her school swimming team, and sang in the church choir. Then, when her mother died, Suesan Atkins ran away from home, and she fell in with a dangerous little man who had spent virtually his whole life in jails. And so at 18, Suesan Atkins became one of Charlie's girls, as they were called, one of the first. More would join her, and in time, all of them would develop a fanatical loyalty to Charles Manson, nurtured by his persuasiveness and hyped by the unrelenting use of drugs. So after 300 LSD trips in 2 years, when Manson sent Suesan Atkins and others of his family to kill, they did it. Later, looking, sounding, and acting crazy, Suesan Atkins spill it all and tell a grand jury what happened. With terrible detail, she would describe how she murdered movie actress Sharon Tate and her yet unborn baby, and then participated in the murder of 4 others on that hot summer's night at the actress's Hollywood home.
That's not true. Every time you take LSD, you rises or expands, and the moral fiber of your character, which is put in you, or when you grow up, everybody grows up with different morals according to their culture. In the house, and I remember that as we went in, a car came up to the driveway, and I remember Tex getting out, and without saying anything, there were gunfire shot. I was in the bushes, and
That's when the young boy, Stephen Parent, was
right,
killed.
was killed
In the car, outside.
Right. The people in the house were all brought into the living room and tied up, and I remember that Wojtek Bakowski, I believe is his name,